My father showed up uninvited. 3 sharp knocks. No warning, just thunder and authority. He didn't say hello. He dropped a folder on my marble counter and said, 850,000 by noon tomorrow. No apology, no explanation, just an order. And when I opened that folder, I saw my own signature, Cassandra Reid, forged in perfect professional ink. I smiled the way someone does right before cutting a wire, because that night I stopped being the family's solution and started becoming their consequence. What happened after still keeps me up sometimes. Before I tell you everything, tell me, have you ever been the one who finally said, enough? Friendly like to say, family is everything. But in my house, family was a currency, and I was the bank. I'm Cassandra Reid, and I grew up in a Chicago suburb where appearances mattered more than the truth. My father, Arthur Reid, built his business on control. Every dinner was a board meeting, every favor came with interest. My younger sister, Valerie, learned early how to play his game. All soft eyes, trembling lips, and perfect timing. Whenever she cried, he'd stop the world to comfort her. Whenever I succeeded, he'd warn me not to show off. Our mother tried to balance him out, but after she passed, the house shifted. Silence became the rule, and obedience became love. I was 20 then, already paying tuition with scholarships while Valerie got a new car to stay motivated. Dad said I was the strong one. What he meant was, you can handle being used. Flooding Cap had my own financial consulting firm downtown, glass walls, city view, and a reputation built from 16-hour days and 0 shortcuts. Success didn't make me feel proud, it made me useful again. My father would brag to anyone who listened that his daughter managed portfolios for CEOs. But when we spoke, it was never to ask how I was, only, can you take care of this for me? I told myself it was okay. It was family, and family always comes first, right? Then came the night that cracked everything open. It was early winter, one of those Chicago nights when the wind cuts straight through your coat. I was finishing a complex valuation report when 3 knocks hit my door, hard, deliberate, like a verdict. I opened it, and there he was, Arthur Reid. Grey hair slicked back, suit immaculate, holding a folder so thick it bent in his hand. He didn't ask to come in, he just walked past me, the smell of expensive cologne following like smoke. Valerie's husband, Marcus, made some mistakes, he said, pacing my kitchen. They owe $850,000. You'll handle it. I thought I misheard. Excuse me? He didn't repeat it, he just opened the folder, pages of numbers, loan documents, receipts, and then at the bottom, my name, my signature. Except it wasn't mine. Flooring a moment, the room tilted. I stared at that neat black ink and realized he'd forged it. My own father had used my name, my credit, my hard-won reputation to guarantee Valerie's husband's debts. He kept talking, explaining, justifying, until the words turned to noise. I remember his tone more than his sentences, that old authority that didn't need my consent. Family doesn't turn its back when things get hard, he said finally. And I smiled, a small, quiet smile that made him step back without realizing why, because for the first time, I wasn't afraid to lose them. That night, while the city hummed below my window, I poured myself a drink, stared at the folder, and whispered, "All right, Dad, you want control? Let's see what happens when I take it back." The next morning, my phone lit up before sunrise. Valerie, then Dad, then both. I didn't answer. I just watched the names flash and fade until the screen went black again. When I finally called back, Valerie's voice trembled like a rehearsed song. "Please, Cassie, don't be mad. Marcus just made a bad investment. We'll pay you back. We'll pay you back." The same words she'd said when I covered her tuition, when I bought her first house, when she maxed out their joint credit card by accident. "Valerie," I said quietly, "Dad forged my name." She went silent for a beat, then she whispered, "He did it for us. You know how he gets." That sentence stuck to my skin like oil. You know how he gets. As if manipulation were a personality trait, not a choice. As if his financial terrorism was just a quirky habit I was obligated to manage. By afternoon, Dad showed up again, this time at my office. The receptionist looked terrified as he marched in, coat unbuttoned, tie loosened, pretending he owned the place. $850,000 by noon, he demanded, like we were in a boardroom. Those people aren't patient. I looked around at my staff, who were pointedly pretending not to listen. My face burned with cold fury, not shame. "You don't get to threaten me here," I said, my voice dangerously low. He smirked. "You've got the money, Cassandra. Don't make me remind you who raised you." That was the moment something shifted. The humiliation, the control, the lifelong conditioning, all of it condensed into one sharp, steady breath. I wasn't angry yet. Anger comes later. I was awake. After he left, I sat alone in my office, lights dimmed, the city outside wrapped in fog. I thought about every time I'd saved them, every check I'd written, every thank you that really meant you owe us more. And suddenly the guilt I'd carried for years cracked open. Beneath it was something colder, clarity. That night, I drove to my mother's old house, the one Dad kept locked but never sold. The key still worked. Dust floated in the flashlight beam as I walked through rooms that once smelled like cinnamon and Sunday dinners. On her desk sat a small wooden box. Inside were her journals, her handwriting neat and certain. I read a passage from the year I turned 16. "Kindness without boundaries becomes servitude. He taught her strength, but never how to use it for herself." I closed the lid and smiled, the truth confirming my plan. By the time I stepped back into the cold, the plan had already started forming. Precise, deliberate, inevitable. The next 48 hours would move like a storm that only I could hear. Outwardly, I was calm, answering emails, drinking coffee, showing up at meetings. Inside, every word my father had ever used as a weapon replayed. "Family comes first. Don't embarrass us. You're the strong one." It all sounded like a single command: obey. Not this time. That night, I called Claire Newen, my attorney, and the one person who knew what my silence really meant. "I need to lock everything down," I told her. She didn't ask why. She just said, "Quiet or public?" "Quiet," I replied, "for now, but prepare the full file." Within an hour, the firewall went up. Every trust account and property Dad had linked to my name was frozen. I revoked his signatory rights from the family foundation he'd attached to my social security number for convenience. The word tasted bitter now. While the documents processed, I started building my own file. I scanned every receipt: tuition, wedding costs, which I secretly paid, mortgage payments, which I temporarily covered, transfers labelled temporary help. Each one was proof that I'd been financing their comfort for years. I didn't realize until then how thick the pile would be, detailing nearly a decade of unilateral financial control he held over me, validated by my own guilt. Claire called again near midnight. "You're sure about this? Once it's done, there's no going back." "I'm already gone," I said. "He wanted my name on the debt. He's about to get my name on the accounting." The next morning, I packed a plain cardboard box. Inside, copies of every wire transfer, property deed, and loan note, all demonstrating my financial subjugation. On top, a printed message in clean, even type. You taught me control, Dad. But control without honesty is manipulation. This isn't revenge, it's accountability. When I sealed the box, the sound of tape cutting through the air felt like punctuation at the end of a long, painful sentence. At dawn, I drove to the Ward family corporate headquarters, not to his office, but to the legal reception area. I dropped a second, identical box, this one addressed to the Chief Compliance Officer of Ward Holdings. It contained the proof of the forged loan guarantee, the original debt documents, and a letter stating that Cassandra Reid was revoking all prior financial ties to Arthur Reid and Ward Holdings due to imminent legal exposure and fraudulent activity. This step was the thermonuclear option. I wasn't just walking away, I was activating the company's internal alarm against him. I left the final personal box on the foyer table of my apartment, right beneath the portrait of him shaking hands with a governor, the same smile he used when cornering people. I stood there for a full minute, staring at the photo, remembering how proud he'd looked when Valerie married Marcus, how he'd called her my delicate one, and me my insurance. By the time sunlight touched the skyline, my bags were packed. Passport, laptop, one photo of Mum and me at the lake. I booked a one-way flight east. No goodbyes, no explanations. When I closed the apartment door behind me, the silence felt different, alive, charged, like freedom waiting for confirmation. 12 hours from then, Arthur and Valerie would stand on that same doorstep demanding money, and all they'd find would be that box, my final gift, wrapped in the truth of their debts. At exactly noon, my building's doorbell camera caught the first shadow. Arthur Reid didn't knock. He announced himself the way men who never hear no do. His reflection flashed in the brass door handle, jaw tight, coat immaculate, the same arrogance he'd worn my entire life. Behind him, Valerie shifted her weight, eyes red, face powdered to hide the wreck. "Crimson, open up, Cassandra." His voice cracked through the intercom. "We had an agreement." He pounded the door again. Then he saw it, the plain brown box sitting neatly on the marble floor inside, visible through the glass panel, my handwriting clean and even stretched across the top. Arthur Ward. "'S that?" Fallback. "Probably a note, she's being dramatic." He tried the handle, locked of course. Then controlled rage demanded submission. He pulled a small metal tool from his pocket. My father had always believed every door would open for him eventually. When he finally stepped inside, the camera blinked red. He set the folder he'd brought, his copy of the debt, on the counter beside the box. Then he tore the tape open. Papers spilled out like a confession. Wire transfers, signed checks, copies of every payment I'd ever made on their behalf, the deeds to Valerie's house and Marcus's failed business, all under my LLC, a printed email trail between him and a broker approving a forged signature. Mine. "What the hell is this?" he muttered, flipping pages faster. Valerie hovered behind him. Is she suing us?" He ignored her. His fingers trembled. The man who built empires on intimidation was finally holding proof of his own collapse. Pedestrians, then he found the USB drive. Small, silver, marked with a single word. Listen. He plugged it into the small Bluetooth speaker on my counter, the same one he'd once called a waste of money. My voice filled the room, low and steady. Flooring. "You taught me that family comes first, but you also taught me how to lie, how to control, how to take. What's inside this box isn't revenge, Dad. It's the truth. You called it family. I called it debt. Now we're even." A pause. Then the faint sound of waves recorded from the main shoreline, where I was watching that very moment. Valerie covered her mouth. She recorded this? He didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on the last photo sitting on top of the documents. The three of us at my college graduation, his arm around Valerie, his hand resting on her shoulder. I stood on the edge of the frame, cropped by someone who thought symmetry mattered more than daughters. He reached for the note beneath it, my handwriting again. If you ever loved me for who I am, not for what I can fix, you'll stop knocking on my door and start looking in a mirror. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. He sank onto one of my bar stools, the leather creaking beneath the weight of everything he'd built. Valerie whispered, "Dad, what do we do?" He whispered back, "We lost her." For once, there was no command, no instruction, just defeat. Country, I sat on the porch of a small cottage overlooking the Atlantic. My laptop buzzed with notifications from Claire. Each message was surgical, clean. Trust secured, power of attorney revoked, Ward Holdings audit approved, forgery notification submitted to bank. I watched the tide climb the rocks and thought of him staring at that box, of Valerie's eyes wide with the realization that the family hierarchy had flipped, and I was no longer holding the safety net. By evening, the ripple hit the surface. Ward Holdings board called an emergency meeting. The bank demanded verification on a series of unauthorized accounts. By nightfall, every dollar my father had hidden beneath my name was frozen. Uninterrupted, my phone, a new one with a new number, buzzed with messages from Claire. Victor Ward resigned. Board replaced him with interim CEO. Valerie called crying, said Marcus disappeared. "Do you want me to respond?" I typed back, "No. Let her learn the silence she never gave me." Days blurred into calm. I went walking every morning, breathing air that didn't smell like concrete and control. In the afternoons, I read by the window, ocean light spilling across pages. Sometimes, between paragraphs, I'd imagine the look on his face when the last mask cracked. Then one night, my laptop chimed. A new video file sent from my doorbell camera. Mrs. Callahan, my elderly neighbor, had forwarded it with a note. "Thought you'd want to see this, honey." I opened it. Valerie stood on my porch under the same porch light. Her mascara streaked, her designer coat slipping off one shoulder. She held the brown box in both hands, shaking. "Financially," she screamed, "we're family. You can't just vanish." Her voice cracked on the last word. She dropped to her knees, crying, not for me, but for the life that had finally stopped cushioning her. I watched until the video ended, until the still frame froze on her face mid-cry. Then I closed the laptop. That was the hardest part, learning that walking away doesn't mean you stop caring. It just means you stop saving. A week later, my father called. Unknown number, but his silence on the line was unmistakable. He said finally, his voice stripped of its usual steel, "We need to talk." I didn't respond at first. The wind outside howled like the city had followed me east. "Why?" I asked. "Because I finally understand what you did," he inhaled shakily. "You embarrassed me. But you were right. Valerie's furious. Marcus is gone, and the company's a disaster. But for the first time, I'm seeing things clearly. You were never the problem. I was." I pressed my fingers to my temple, closing my eyes. "Dad," he continued, "I saw your mother in you that night." He paused, a strange, calm certainty entering his voice. "She had it too. She'd have been proud you did something I never could. Walk away." For the first time in my life, I heard regret without performance, not guilt used as leverage, real, raw regret. "What happens now?" I asked. "I don't know," he admitted. "Maybe we start by being honest." He let out a weak laugh. "Maybe one day I'll visit. No folders, no demands. Bring coffee, I said softly. Not debt. Tightened, sad but human. Deal. When the call ended, I sat there, phone still warm in my hand, the ocean murmuring beyond the window. For years, I'd thought power came from control. Turns out, it comes from release. At that moment, somewhere across the continent, I knew he'd seen the empty space where my box once sat, and finally understood that it wasn't revenge I'd left behind. It was truth. 3 months later, I had almost forgotten what constant tension felt like. Maine had a rhythm that demanded you slow down. Gulls screaming over the dock, the smell of salt and coffee drifting through every window. I rented a small place near the water and started teaching a weekly workshop at the community centre, Financial Boundaries for Women. 10 seats, always full. They came with the same stories told in different voices. The mother who kept bailing out her grown son, the sister who couldn't say no, the wife whose husband used her credit card just for now. Each time I spoke, I heard pieces of my past echo back at me, and for the first time, it didn't sting, it clarified. One evening after class, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it until instinct whispered her name. Cassie? Valerie's voice was quiet, almost shy. I heard you're teaching. Submerged. That sounds new, I said faintly. I got a job at a furniture store, she continued. Real one, no commissions, no excuses, it's quiet. Pregnant's good, I said, means you stopped running. She hesitated. Thank you for not rescuing me. When the call ended, I sat on the porch, the tide inching closer, silver under the moonlight. The past felt like something far behind, not hovering anymore. Somewhere inside the house, the kettle whistled. I stood up, whispered to the waves. That's enough. A few weeks later, I opened my mailbox and found a postcard, a photo of a fishing dock, the handwriting uneven but familiar. You were right. I taught you everything about business and nothing about love. Learning now. Proud of you, Dad. I pinned it above my desk beside a note from one of my students that said, You helped me say no for the first time. That night, I walked down to the shore. No phone, no noise, just the soft rhythm of waves and the kind of freedom that doesn't need permission.